Good morning. I am really excited to introduce our keynote speaker to you today. Jessie Bernal is an infant and early childhood mental health consultant and a licensed marriage and family therapist. They have spent over 15 years working with the birth to 5 population, focusing on infant and early childhood mental health, neural and social emotional development, inclusion of children with diverse learning needs, staff and caregiver wellness, and mitigating the long-term effects of early childhood trauma. In addition, Jessie is an adjunct professor at Pacific Oaks College in Pasadena, and they serve as a nationwide expert, providing consultations to authors and trainings for programs such as Head Start, Early Head Start, and other childhood programs across the country. Their presentation today is entitled Responding Rather Than Reacting, a body, mind, emotion approach for helping professionals to understand triggers and stress responses and increase self-regulation. We are delighted to have you, Jessie. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Let me get my screen up really quickly. All right, slideshow. All right, y'all seeing the front slide? Yes. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for that introduction. Can we watch some more clients in cars? I kind of am here for that right now. Hi, thank you for the intro. I am so incredibly excited to be here. I have a very long standing history in working in the prenatal to 5 population, and I've done a lot, I've done a lot of home visitation. I've done personal home visitation. I've done supervision of those who do home visitation. And I'm just, I'm in awe of all of you, which is why I'm so incredibly grateful to be here. So we have an hour, which is not nearly enough time. So I'm going to be talking fast. And there will be time, hopefully. I say this every time, but I'm going to say it now. There will be time, hopefully, at the end for questions. So please write those in the Q&A. I also have the chat box open if you just want to put comments, thoughts in there. So as you all know, and as I can see from what we've been doing for the last hour so far right now, y'all pretty much know how to participate on Zoom. In the chat, you can always type in the chat. If I'm saying something you agree with, type that in. If I'm saying something that resonates with you, let me know. It's a great way for me to get a little bit more personal with y'all, especially because I can't see your faces. So I definitely want you to utilize that chat and let me know that you're picking up what I'm putting down. Second one, and I know we're already using it already, is those emojis. Please, as we go through, if you agree with something, if something makes you laugh, if something makes you cry, if you want to thumbs up something I'm saying, put that in there. That's another great way just for us to have that participation happening. There's going to be some opportunities throughout the presentation where I'm going to ask for your, of course, my dog has been quiet all morning. And right when I start talking, he's probably barking at someone delivering something. So definitely utilize those emojis. And like I said, use the Q&A for specific questions, but I do have the chat going and I have it visible to me. So if you want to put something in there that's maybe not like a break in what I'm talking about to answer a question, but maybe just something kind of related or something you want to throw out that you just want me and other people to see, please go ahead and write that in as well. So before we get into the full keynote, I want to take a moment for us to just pause for a second. The dog barking is amazing. I'm telling you, quiet all morning. For us to just pause for a second, get a little grounded, get a little present, within this work that we're doing in the helping profession in general, whether you're a home visitor, a teacher, a therapist, a social worker, a supervisor of any of those, right? Oftentimes, and you can let me know if you relate to this, it's like go, 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 one thing to the next, one thing to the next, like mapping the new address, driving there, finding the parking, getting in the gate, doing the visit, writing the paperwork. It's go, 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 right? So we don't often have a lot of time just to stop and pause and just check in on how we're doing, right? So I want to give us that opportunity right now to get a little bit present here. So on the screen, I'm gonna put up a list of a couple different areas that I want each and every one of you to just do a little personal check-in. This is just for you. You don't have to write your answers on the chat, although people often love to share, which if you want to, you can. And as these areas that I want you to check in come up on the screen. I just want you to rate yourself on how you're feeling, right? On a scale of 1 to 10. So like 10 being no good, great, not well, awful, empty, 5 being neutral, 10 being great, wonderful, best I've ever felt. It's just for you, right? And what I really want to challenge you to do is, as we're getting present, as we're checking in, not judging yourself on how you're feeling, right? How you're feeling is how you're feeling. And if at the moment something's not feeling great, that's okay. We don't need to necessarily do anything to change it. We're just getting present, recognizing, acknowledging. Isabel already says they're feeling great. So good. We're off to a good start. All right. First thing we're going to do is we're going to check in physically. And I already see those numbers coming up. So some of you are like right on top of it. I love it. Those are just those overachievers right there. So we're going to stop and check in on how we're feeling in our physical body, right? So I just want you to start maybe at the top of your head, run down through your neck, your shoulders, arms, stomach, legs. Just how is your body feeling in this moment, right? Maybe you like got up super early and did yoga this morning and you're like, I feel loose and everything feels great. Or maybe if you're like me, your lower back is hurting because my lower back is almost always hurting, right? And just give yourself a little rating. I'm seeing those numbers coming in. I'm seeing a lot of 8s, a lot of 7s, or some 3s, some 5s. Yeah, no matter where you're at right now, that's fine. The purpose of this is just stopping and getting a little present with how you're feeling. All right. So we start with our physical body. We're going to circle back to this when we actually get deeper into the presentation today, but we always want to start with our physical body. Oftentimes, our body's going to tell us how we're doing before our emotions and our thoughts tell us how we're doing. Next, so we started with the physical body. Now we're going to bring it to our mental functioning, our mental state. How are we feeling right now? Are we feeling present, focused, alert, right? Or maybe our mind's in a couple of different places right now. Maybe we're thinking about something else. Maybe we're having a little bit of difficulty focusing. Just check in on how you're feeling in this moment mentally. Rate yourself 1 to 10, judgment-free, just getting present. I'm seeing a whole array of numbers come up, and I really appreciate you all actively participating, even though you don't have to share if you don't want to. All right, so we did our physical body, we did our mental state, and now we're going to switch into how we're feeling emotionally. So bring it into the heart, maybe, and put a hand or two on your heart. Take a deep breath into your heart, and just how are we feeling emotionally, right? Maybe a little excited because this presentation so far, everything we've heard this morning has been amazing, right? Maybe we're feeling a little bit anxious because there's other things happening. Maybe we're feeling a mix of multiple emotions at once. And as someone who's a therapist, I can tell you when you're feeling multiple conflicting emotions, oof, that can lead to all sorts of challenges, right? It can be very confusing, but it also is just part of being human, right? Checking in how you're feeling emotionally. I'm seeing some numbers come in. Excellent. And then lastly, we're going to do a check-in on how you're feeling spiritually. So this word can mean something different to everybody. However this word resonates with you is what this word means, right? This could be your connection to a higher power, to the universe, to nature. This can be your connection to coffee, right? You can say, I don't identify with the word spirituality. I'm going to pass, and that's totally fine, right? But just feeling however this word resonates with you, doing a check-in on how you're feeling in this area. Okay, for some reason, every time I do any sort of training related to like any sort of like self-care, anything, this for whatever reason, this category is always very high. So I'm seeing a lot of different things coming in here. And again, however you identify with this is correct. All right. Thank you all for participating in this. I hope for a second we were able to just get a little present, get a little grounded. Like I said, in this field, we're go, 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 go. So sometimes we need to pause and just honor ourselves and how we're feeling so we can continue to be honoring others and supporting others. And we're going to go way into detail about that over the course of the next 50 minutes or so. Okay, so now that we're here, now that we're present, now that we're grounded, I want you to write in the chat. And because there's so many of us, I want you to combine these two answers together into one chat, so there's not so much coming at once. I want you to write in what's your role. And I saw a lot of people coming up, like I kind of have a sense of who's here. So write in what's your role, and then in 5 words or less, right? So here's the challenge, be thoughtful. I want you to describe why you do what you do. What is your why behind this? All right. I love the people. Parent educator, to be of service, Excellent. Parent educator, because of motherhood. Supervisor, support, see people grow. Okay, they're coming in quick now. All right. It's very rewarding, helping others, empowering families, to witness transformative change. Oh my God, that's a good one. Motherhood, I love seeing families thrive. I want to help. I love to help, create change, supporting families, paying it forward. Bridging the gap. If I'm skipping yours, it doesn't mean that it's not good. It just means that they're coming up all at once. All of these answers are very good. I love children. I love helping others. I love empowering families. I love helping others. Helping parents feel less alone. Ooh, that's a good one. Connection, growth, love, and support, making a difference, helping and supporting the community, positive impact. All right, excellent. Is anyone noticing any themes here? Okay, what I'm not seeing, and I can agree with this because I've been in the field a very long time, is nobody's up here writing, I want to make 6 figures and live in Beverly Hills, right? Most of us are here because we genuinely love what we're doing. We want to create change. We want to be of service. We want to connect with others. We want to make a difference, right? We want to create bigger, brighter, more beautiful futures for the lives that we're interconnecting with. And I'm going to tell you the reason that I love doing what I'm doing in terms of, a lot of my work is doing trainings and consultation with people who are providing the direct service, or who are supervising those who are providing the direct service, is because I want to at least have some little part in helping people stay connected to why they're doing what they're doing, especially when things get difficult and challenging. Because let me know if you've ever experienced in this work things getting difficult or challenging. And I would venture to guess the answer is very often, if not at least once a day, if not maybe a couple times a day, right? Us in this field, we understand that this work is transformative, okay? And I know this sounds cheesy, but as somebody who has really specialized in infant and early childhood mental health and has worked with a lot of kids, families, expecting mothers who have been exposed to trauma, I can tell you the work that we're doing in terms of early identification and early intervention, each and every one of you, when you participate in this work, you literally have the ability to change somebody's life just by showing up. And if that's not enough to want to get to keep doing this every day, then I don't know what is. This work is so incredibly important. So I just want to take a moment to thank you all. And I know we're talking a lot about how amazing your work is, like, already all day today. So just to reiterate, this work is so important. It's so life-changing, and it's so transformative. Like I said, you just show up consistently and you have the ability to change a child's life, right? There's a ripple effect here in what we're doing, right? So when we think about the families that we're interacting with, right, the first thing that comes to mind is the children, babies, right? They're the ones that we're here for. We want to help them thrive. We want to help them grow, right? So who's the ones that are most there to help hold those children, to help regulate them, to help teach them, to help them grow and thrive? Is the parents, the children, and the families, right? But as you all know, especially those of you who are doing direct work with parents, children, and families, that can be very stressful. And a lot of the parents and the caregivers and the families that we work with, a lot of them are going through their own challenges as well, right? Like whether it's like financial stuff, interpersonal things, there's a lot happening for them, right? So a lot of them now, they're dependent on us as home visitors, direct service staff to really hold them, to provide that space for them, to provide co-regulation with them, to identify when, you know, their child's dysregulated and therefore they're dysregulated, for us to show up and be a safe haven to help them regulate, to help them feel grounded, so then they can ripple that forward and help their children to feel grounded. Okay, y'all with me so far? Y'all picking up what I'm putting down? Is this making sense? Okay. And then for those of you who may be in supervisor, manager, director, admin roles, I'm not forgetting about you, because you're also then supporting these direct staff that are going in to support the parents and caregivers and families who are supporting the children, right? So this work, there's a ripple effect, right? We're all emotionally invested and we're all really supporting people on all different ends to ultimately best support the children. Y'all feeling me on this? Is this sounding like what y'all are doing all day, every day? Yes, okay. And I would also venture to guess that you would agree that this is personal work, right? We are showing up as human beings with open hearts, literally walking into people's living rooms, into their homes, right? And bringing ourselves in there in a personal level. Okay, so on the next slide, I'm going to list out various things on this slide, and I want you to let me know if you bring, as they come up, if you bring this quality into the work that you're doing daily. All right, so you can write it in the chat, you can write it in, put an emoji reaction, whichever works best for you. You can do both. Okay, how many of these do you bring into work every day? First one, do you bring empathy to work every day? Empathy to the families that you're working with, empathy to the caregivers that you're working with, empathy to your coworkers, right? Are you showing up with empathy? I'm seeing a lot of hearts coming in and thumbs up. Yes, 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 and yes. And an absolutely yes. Good. All right, next one. Are you bringing compassion, right? So the ability to really feel for another person. Does compassion show up? Excellent. Ooh, I love it. I see a new heart emoji in the chat. That makes me very, very happy. All right, I'm seeing lots of yeses. Okay, how about relationship building? Are you consistently doing work every day to build relationships, to strengthen relationships, to build trusting relationships? Yes, yes, and yes. Oh, I'm liking the new emojis coming in on the chat. Yes, keep those coming. All right, I'm seeing a lot of yeses, a lot of hearts, a lot of alwayses. Support, right? Are you there to support other people in whichever way that is, whether it's emotional support, whether it's finding resources, referrals, right? Supporting in one way or another. Maybe if it's just validating somebody's experience, right? You're trying to show support for others. Seeing yeses, yeses, yeses. Cat eye hearts, I love that one. Okay. Emotional investment. Okay. Are you at least somewhat emotionally invested in the families that you're working with, right? Are you emotionally invested in the people that you're supervising? You have some level of emotional investment in wanting them to succeed, and somehow your emotions are tied to that. Yes, it's hard. Like, I mean, as we can have the best boundaries in the world, and it's very, very difficult for us to like show up for these families every day and not have some level of emotional investment. Miriam says yes all the time, a lot. All right, emotional connection. While we're emotionally invested, we're also emotionally connecting with people, right? We're humans walking in to very vulnerable situations. Yes, all the time, all the time. Excellent. Passion. And I know the answer to this because I saw the why you do what you do's already. Are you passionate about this work, right? 100% hearts. Yes. We bring passion to this work. Personalization. Are you bringing pieces of your true self to this work, right? Are you personalizing it in some way? You're making it yours. You're bringing who you are as a person into these relationships. I'm seeing hearts. I'm seeing yeses. I'm seeing winky faces. I love it. All right. How about the idea of feeling felt, right? Are you trying to show the people that you're connecting with that you feel what they're feeling, very similar to empathy, right? I'm seeing hands raised, I'm seeing hearts, okay? How about authenticity? Are you bringing your most authentic self to some degree? And yes, we're also at work, right? But to some degree, are we showing up authentically? I'm seeing 100, I'm seeing 100, I'm seeing yes, yes, yes. Okay. So we know as we're going into this work, we're looking at all these things on the board. This is personal stuff, right? This isn't just about showing up, typing a number somewhere and going home. Like, we are literally showing up with our hearts on our sleeves for the people that we're working with, right? This is personal work. This work also requires a level of vulnerability, right? So if I had more time today, I would show you Brene Brown's little clip. It's on YouTube about, I think it's called Empathy versus Sympathy. If you have not watched it, I would highly recommend watching it. I can send it over later for you to watch it. It's a great clip, but I pulled this line from it because I think it's so important and so related to what we're doing. Someone said, great vid. It's a very cute vid. So this line from that video says, in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. I'm going to read that one more time. I want you to relate to this. In order to connect with you, right? In order to connect with someone else, we have to connect with something in ourselves that knows that feeling, that relates to that feeling, right? You guys, is that resonating with y'all? Are y'all feeling that? Okay, so what happens when we do that, right? In order to connect with the feelings of others, you need to connect with your own similar feelings. So this is when we're talking about this work is personal, right? We have to bring our own feelings into this work to a degree to be able to authentically connect. Terry just put the video in the chat. Thank you, Terry. When we connect with our own feelings, especially in relation to another person, that, and you can let me know if you can relate to this, it can trigger then our own personal thoughts, feelings, beliefs, memories, emotions, right? It's almost impossible to be vulnerable and to open ourselves up to feeling something that someone else is feeling without us having our own personal feelings activated, right? It is, I would even venture to say it's impossible. And if you're doing that, you're probably having if you're not doing that, your connections are probably a little bit, it's probably challenging to make a connection because you really have to have a piece of yourself to genuinely connect. But when we do that, when we have empathy, when we're caring for another person, when we're connecting for another person, when we have countertransfer, which I'm going to go into in the next slide, these can all trigger our own personal dysregulations, okay? I'm going to ask a very personal question, and I already know the answer to it. If you've ever been dysregulated at work, right? I'm really going to define the next slide, but you probably know what that means already. If you've ever been dysregulated at work, let us know. And if you say no, I'm gonna not believe you, right? Because we are human and we're doing very personal work, right? We get dysregulated at work. I should see those yeses coming in. I see a lot of thumbs up. If you're like, my supervisor's gonna see my name, I don't want them to know, they already know. Okay. So getting a little bit deeper into some of these words I've been throwing around, right? Dysregulation, triggers, countertransference, right? So dysregulation, that's essentially an intense emotional response or a difficult time managing your emotional response to something, to some sort of stimuli in the environment, right? This can be something that someone says, something that someone does, something that you see, right? And it really, what's happening when we're dysregulated is it's activating our central nervous system. This means our flight, fight, freeze system is getting activated. We talked a lot about emotions in the last few slides, but what I'm really going to tell you is, like, this is science, right? This is like biology. We can't do a lot about this because it's just how we're built as humans, right? Triggers are whatever that stimuli is that that provokes some sort of emotional response. So like I said, it could be places, it could be people, it could be events, it could be smells, right? Something that just elicits an emotional response. This could be a positive emotional response, right? But oftentimes in the work we're doing, when we get dysregulated, it's because there's some sort of not so positive emotional response. And then we have this word countertransference. This is usually used in a therapeutic setting, but I feel like this really applies to everyone, because essentially what countertransference is when a professional's personal feelings or emotions are in relation to a client, a child, a caregiver, a family, right? And this happens all the time, right? Because we have our own personal emotions happening and they somehow get intertwined a little with who we're working with. It happens frequently. Like I said, and someone wrote this in, thank you, science, for giving us these words. This is, if I had more time, I would go deep into our fight or flight system. Y'all probably have some familiarity with that. But when we're triggered, it's our body's way of saying, oh, something's not right here. Like, let's keep ourselves safe, right? It's a very natural. It's not only natural, but in many cases, it's adaptive because it helps to keep us safe. So we're going to go a little bit more into detail about that. And again, as I'm going through this, if you have those questions, please put them into the Q&A. I'm trying to make sure we stay on time to get to questions at the end. So challenging situations and stressful situations, they impact us. They impact our bodies, our emotions, our thoughts, and our behavior. And the next couple slides, I want you to know that, again, this is all very rooted in science, right? This is all very rooted in biology, in neurobiology, in physiology, all of that stuff. So challenging situations iceberg. Oftentimes, when a challenging situation at work occurs, it's just the tip of the iceberg of what's really happening for us. So if within the work that you do, I have some examples up here, but I want you just to write in, big or small, it doesn't matter. What are just some of the challenges that come to mind with the work that we do, right? So I can tell you from someone who's done lots of home visitation in the past, small one comes to mind, not having parking. Have you ever been like 20 minutes late for a visit because you've been circling to try to find parking and then you park like 5 blocks away, right? Or, not being able to get into the gate, right? Or it's summer in Los Angeles and the family doesn't have AC and everybody is just like sweating, right? All right, I'm seeing good ones coming in. Not enough resources. Yes. The darn gate codes, bathroom access in the field. Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how many McDonald's bathrooms that I went in, how many times I ate 7-Eleven for lunch in the car while writing a note, right? Safety issues. Okay, there's a range, right? We've been in locations before that genuinely are maybe not the safest of locations, right? But all families need support no matter where they're living. Getting lost. What else do we have in here? And then there's the bigger stuff like family violence, DCFS, right? You have a whole plan for your home visit and maybe you're like, okay, I got to talk to mom about something really important related to like her extended family, and you show up and the whole extended family's there and you're like, okay, I guess that conversation is not happening yet. Oh, they're coming in now. DV at a visit, car accidents, parking tickets, cancellations, DCFS, parents' responses to child's emotions. Yeah, these parents are trying to learn how to respond to their emotions. And sometimes we see things and we're like, oof, right? Not being able to find a home, having a plan B, a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. Yes. So lots of good stuff. Parent crisis, mileage. Yes. So just to name, and you can keep adding them in. There's so many more, but just to name a few, right? Not finding parking. Your visit doesn't go as planned, right? That whole plan A, B, and C. Maybe there's some risk assessment related safety concerns, crisis management, DCFS stuff, right? Maybe you're dealing with families who've been exposed to major trauma, right? Maybe you have families who have difficulties with boundaries, right? Maybe you're trying to just figure out how to navigate cultural boundaries, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to have like lunch with this family, but I know that part of their culture is they really want to feed me lunch. Like, I'm not sure what to do, right? Paperwork, no AC, right? So yeah, families not showing, lots of great stuff coming in the chat, right? So these are all, we know that this work is challenging, right? But these challenges, oftentimes, this is the tip of the iceberg, because these are the things that can often, some less, some more, depending on who we are and what our background is, that can trigger us, right? So these things that are happening outside of us then go internal, right? And then these can feel like things for us, and it can think like things for us in our mind, right? So some thoughts that can come up when these things happen. Like I'm more invested than this parent is, right? Why am I feel like I'm working harder than this family, or I'm not equipped to handle this conversation. This is too difficult of a conversation for me to have. Like I'm feeling nervous about trying to bring this up to them. This is too much for me. I can't, it's just too much for me to manage. And then, you know, the classic, oh my gosh, I'm not good at my job. Let me know, have you ever had a point where you're like, I'm just not good at my job, right? That feeling of doubt where it's just like, man, I don't know how to help this family. What am I doing here? And then feelings, right? Like fear, anxiety, frustration, shame, guilt. How many of you have ever felt fear, frustration, anxiety, shame, or guilt in your work day to day? Yes, most of us have, right? These challenging work situations can really trigger these thoughts and emotions for us, okay? So then what happens in addition to that is we're also individual humans who all have our own pasts, right? We've all been alive for however many years, have all been through our own personal experiences. And oftentimes when we feel triggered, it additionally can be exacerbated by our own personal past experiences, our own personal past challenges, our own personal past traumas. When something triggers us, it's usually not just because something happened and I'm upset because that something happened. It's because something happened and all these other things happened to me in the past, and this makes this feel really upsetting for me. Y'all picking up what I'm putting down? Is that making sense to y'all? Okay. So when we're triggered, it increases our stress and it increases our body's stress response. So our body's stress response is our fight, flight, or freeze, right? That's when our heart starts beating fast. Our muscles start tightening up. Maybe we get like a little bit clammy, a little bit sweaty. Our breathing starts to get shallow, right? This is what happens physiologically as a result of these external stressors and as a result of us being in a situation where our body is feeling like we're in fear. It's going to react because it wants to keep us safe. But when that happens, oftentimes, and the more that this is happening for us, ironically enough, we tend to decrease our self-care, right? And if we decrease our self-care, then it also increases our sensitivity to triggers and dysregulation. And then it also increases the negative thoughts and feelings that we're having. So we can very easily, once we start getting dysregulated at work, we can get in this cycle where we're like, challenging things are happening and I'm having negative thoughts and feelings, and my stress response is getting really activated. And because my stress response is getting really activated, I'm having more negative thoughts and feelings, and that negative thoughts and feelings are now reactivating my stress response. So we can get stuck in this cycle, right? So anybody relating to this, right? Anybody saying like, okay, like I think maybe that's happened to me once or twice before, or I can totally see how this may be something that has been going on that I may not even be fully aware of. Most of us are not aware that this is happening, right? Most of us just think, oh, like I'm so upset that I can't find parking, right? When that's the tip, and all of this stuff is happening underneath. So when we're talking about these stressful situations, right, we have to think about this link of what's happening from external stuff to internal stuff. And then we also have to think about like what's really in our control and what's really out of our control. Because the best way that we can increase our regulation, which means calming that feeling and breaking that cycle, is to become very aware that it's happening, right? And here's the thing, going back to that ripple effect, when we're dysregulated and we're in the presence of a family, even if we don't tell them we're dysregulated, they're going to somehow pick up on that, right? And they can become dysregulated. If they're already dysregulated, we're not going to help anybody regulate if we're dysregulated, okay? Co-regulation requires us to be regulated first. So looking at this kind of sequence of events, right? we have these external stressors, things that happen outside of us, the parking, a difficult session, right? Anything relating to other people, environmental things, right? All of this stuff, that's all external, right? And here's the thing with that. It's very out of our control, right? Sorry, there's my cat. Speaking of things out of our control. We can't control what other people are doing. We can't control the parking. We can't control the AC. We can't control the weather, right? We can't control other people. If we could control other people, I probably as a therapist wouldn't have a job. We can't, right? As a result of our external stressors, that's when we have that physiological response, right? That's when our stress response gets activated. That's when our heart rate goes up. That's when our breathing changes, our muscles tighten, we get flushed. We're in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And this is also out of our control, right? Because this is just our body's way of keeping us safe, right? We can't control it. When this is happening, we can do things to reduce that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but we can't. Our body responds when it thinks it's in danger, right? And then we get to choose how we manage it, but we can't really control how and when our body responds. Sorry. Other things we can't control. My cat laying on the back of the computer. All right. So when our physiological stress response is activated, thank you for the laughter, I appreciate it, right? Sometimes you just got to surrender to things out of your control. Then oftentimes our emotional response gets activated along with our thoughts, and they kind of come together. I'm going to talk about emotional first, right? That's when something stressful happens, like the code's not working and we're calling the family and they're not picking up, and now we're 20 minutes late for the session, and now like our heart's beating fast, our muscles are tightening, and now we're irritated, we're frustrated, maybe we're angry, maybe we're sad because it's like, oh my god, I was really like trying to give them a resource today, right? Our emotional response, it's very difficult to control, especially that initial emotional response, right? We're not really responsible for that first one, but we can redirect it. So like oftentimes the third, fourth, and fifth emotional response is kind of like, oh, I think we could have done something about this, but that initial one, it's pretty out of our control. We can redirect it, but it happens because we're human. Same with our mental response, right? This is what our brain is doing to us when we're in these modes, right? And this could range multiple ways, right? I'm not valued, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not like things that we start thinking. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not good at my job. Like nobody cares about me. I'm not like all sorts of different things. So with our mental responses, again, this is all what's happening very quickly when something stressful happens, right? So our mental responses are difficult to control, but again, we can redirect them. And then lastly, our behavioral responses. So this is how we then outwardly, so the physiological part, the emotional part, the mental part, that's all very happening internally for us. But then behavior response is how we externalize how we're feeling. So this can be an array of things depending on who you are, what your background is, what your go-to defense mechanisms are, right? Some people shut down, some people get defensive, some people give up, right? Some people kind of like collapse within. Some people have somatic pain, right? Where it's like, oh no, I have a migraine, I have a stomach ache. And oftentimes what happens is this changes the course of our interactions with families, right? Where we may interact with them differently. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be like irritated with them. We may even be like overly invested in them because we're triggered in some way, right? And this is in our control, but it can be difficult to control. And the reason that is because these three things, physiological response, emotional response, and mental response, following some sort of external stressor, happens so quickly that 99% of the time we're not even aware that it's taking place. We just start behaving a certain way, and we don't even know that this is happening. And when we're talking about self-regulation, we're talking about how we can develop more awareness. Okay, y'all with me still? Yes, is this making sense? Okay. Important thing to think about. This whole chain of events is not the same degree for everybody. It's all of this is impacted, the intensity is impacted by our own past experiences, right? So like what I talked about before, we're humans, right? Traumatic events and frightening situations that happened to us in the past may make stressful situations seem even more activatedly charged for us, right? If we've had difficult emotional situations in the past, the beliefs that we've over the course of the 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years that we've been alive, plus the beliefs that we've developed about ourselves, about the world, about others are going to impact how we respond to stressful situations. And then also our culture, our intergenerational beliefs, our experiences. Many of us all have different cultural backgrounds and intergenerational upbringings that are going to also play into this, right? So I think, when we're talking about this, it's really important to remember that we need to be gentle with ourselves, right? As we gain more awareness, we start to be like, wow, I'm still like really dysregulated and I don't know why, right? Being gentle with yourselves, being gentle with others. We all have, like I said, the 25, 35, 45, 55, 65 years of life that we've lived as humans, just trying our best to get by and to make it through, right? And now we're in these situations that are very personal, that we're opening ourselves up. We're very susceptible to being triggered, right? So just that level of being gentle. And this is a great thing to model for the families that you're working with. So when it comes to responding versus reacting, what we want to do is we want to have mindful awareness of our physiological response. This is going to be the indicator for us that something is happening if we stop and listen. When we feel our heart rate going, when we pay attention to our breathing, when we feel our muscles tightening up, that's going to be our cue to do something to regulate ourselves. So it reduces the intensity of our emotional response, of our mental response, and then of our behavioral responses. Okay, that's really the key to responding rather than reacting, is to identify when you're getting dysregulated so you can work on regulating yourself and you can respond from a place of regulation versus reacting from a place of dysregulation. Does that make sense? Y'all hearing me? Okay. Because reacting comes from a place of dysregulation. It's emotionally driven. It's usually panic, anxiety, fear, and impulsivity driven, right? Reacting is immediate. It's automatic, okay? And what happens when we react is this impacts our ability to be present, because we're being driven from a place of fight or flight. And when we're driven from fight or flight, we're not grounded, we're not present. And it leads to disconnection with others, and it leads to co-dysregulation. I was giving a training one time and someone said, dysregulation is contagious. And I said, absolutely. I said, but regulation is contagious too. And that's where it happens when we can respond versus react, right? So response, I love this. If you break down the word responsibility, it's response and the ability to respond. So being responsible oftentimes is the ability to be able to respond versus react. It comes from a place of regulation. It involves having to be considerate, having to be deliberate. It's usually slow and thoughtful. And most importantly, it puts space between the event, whatever's dysregulating you, and your action. When we can put space between our dysregulation and our behavior, then we are allowing to respond versus impulsively react. And this is what leads to the ability for us to have empathy, because when we're in fight or flight, it's really difficult for us to try to see another person's perspective, right? Think about the last time you got into an argument with like a family member or a partner and you were so dysregulated. It's really challenging to see someone's point of view when you're dysregulated, if not impossible, right? And we can't have empathy if we can't see someone else's point of view. Responding also leads to connection, and it leads to co-regulation, the ability for us to regulate ourselves, calm ourselves, respond, and help somebody else regulate. And again, we're modeling, because caregivers need to be regulated to help their children regulate. And we often need to be regulated to help caregivers regulate, to help their children regulate. So how do we do this? If I had another hour and a half, I would go into so much detail about so many tools and tips and skills and things that you can do. but we don't have an hour and a half. We have a little under 20 minutes, probably less than that, but I'm going by the time on my on my slide. Sorry for who's doing the agenda, Charlene. Sorry about that. But I think we're okay, kind of okay on time. Yes. So we don't have a ton of time to go over in detail, but I will give you some of the basics to really start thinking about mindfulness. And I want to tell you right now, when we're talking about being mindful, with identifying when we're dysregulated by listening to our body, this is going to be an ongoing journey and practice. You're not going to go to a 1-hour keynote and be like, suddenly I know how to read all of my physical reactions to things and I can regulate myself. No, this is like years of practice, right? I'm a therapist and I teach this for a living, and I still have to be practicing, and I still have times where I have difficulty accessing these tools. And the more you practice, like a muscle, the more you practice it, the easier it's going to get. Okay. So when we're talking about mindful awareness, right? Mindfulness is really the awareness and acceptance of your thoughts, feelings, physical sensations as they're happening. And it's about being non-judgmental, because when we start getting judgmental to ourselves, our emotions and our mental processing, everything just starts to like go downhill, right? And it's the awareness of really saying, paying attention to what is happening in the moment, to pausing. Mindful awareness allows us to pause, to respond rather than react, right? It allows us to take that moment to say, wow, my heart's beating really fast right now. Wow, I am feeling really anxious. I'm feeling really frustrated right now. Or, wow, I'm having really negative thoughts about myself in this moment. I need to recognize that. I need to pause there. That's the awareness, right? So in order to just get us started and ensure that I'm leaving you all with just a few tips and tools, I'm going to talk about the 3 main players in really building our mindful awareness. And this is our body, our physical body, our breath, and our mind. Okay. So first one is somatic awareness. This is awareness of our body. So one thing you can try doing, and I don't recommend you doing this always, but this is a good way to practice this. If you think about like a stressful situation, and I'm going to say right now, don't think about a traumatic situation. Think about like a low stakes, stressful situation that you had, right? Something you can identify that's like, ooh, that was pretty stressful, right? And allow yourself to kind of get into that memory, get into that feeling, focus on that situation, and then scan your body and notice what it's doing, right? Another way that like you can kind of practice this, and I think one thing that's relatively universal for stress is when we're in traffic. None of us like to be in traffic, right? Our stress response to some degree gets activated every time we're in traffic. So taking that moment to just scan your body, and essentially what this means is you pause and you just from head to toe move through your body and see what you notice, right? And I would focus specifically on your heartbeat, because when we're in stress, our heartbeat changes. Our breathing also changes. We're going to talk about more in a second. And our muscles often tighten up, right? So just even creating awareness of what is my body doing when I'm in stress will allow us to pause and to be able to do something that's not reacting, right? So just flowing through from head to toe. And I also like, if you go on to YouTube, there's tons of body scan activities that you can do. There's also some ones for, if anyone works with like younger age children, or like maybe like, you know, some of the parents you're working with have like siblings, there's body scans for kids that are really good, that just allows us to get present with our bodies. Okay. So that's the first one. The next one is breathing. This is so important. So, you know, when like you're upset, or maybe someone else has been upset, and you're like, take a couple of deep breaths, just breathe, right? There's actually science behind, but sometimes when people say that to you, you're like, you breathe, right? But there's actually science behind why breathing works, and I'm going to explain why. So when we're in some sort of fight or flight mode, when something stressful happens, our body, like I said, has these automatic physiological response. Our central nervous system gets activated. This is all things that we don't control. It just happens. And part of that is our breathing gets shallow. So our breathing usually gets faster and shallow when we're in a stressful situation, just automatically. However, the more our breathing gets stressful, or the more our breathing gets shallow and the faster our heart's beating and all of that, the more we feel anxious, stressed, and dysregulation. And the more we feel anxiety, stress, and dysregulation, the faster our heart's going to beat, the more shallow our breathing's going to get, and then the more we're going to feel dysregulated. Can you see that cycle, right? Can you see how that's working? And if anybody has ever had a panic attack, right, this is a perfect example of what happens when you have a panic attack, that you just keep getting more. It's this vicious cycle where you get more and more dysregulated, right? So the thing with breathing is, if you're in stress and your breathing gets shallow and fast, if you consciously and purposefully slow down your breathing, it's almost like you're tricking your body into thinking that you're not under stress, that you're not in a stress response, because you can't have shallow, anxious stress breathing and have slow, calm stress breathing at the same time. It's physically impossible. So this is why deep breathing works, right? So oftentimes when we're talking about noticing those initial, the initial dysregulation, is just taking awareness to what your breath is even doing, right? And oftentimes you'll notice one of two things is happening, right? So you're either already breathing quickly and shallowly, and you can say, okay, my breathing's really fast right now, let me slow it down. Or you may actually be holding your breath. And if you hold your breath, eventually you're going to have to breathe that out and in really quickly. So eventually you're going to start breathing quickly and shallow, right? So step one is just noticing, what's my breathing doing right now? This, for me, I'm like in my own personal journey and learning about my own stress response and dysregulation, this was one of the first things I started doing. Was the second I felt any sort of stress response happen, I would say, what's my breathing doing right now? Okay, I'm holding my breath right now. Let me take a couple slow, deep breaths. We control our breathing. We can actually regulate our physiological response. Okay, does that make sense to y'all? Are you understanding what I'm saying? I feel like you were able to explain years of therapy in 1 hour. Oh, that is like one of the best compliments. Thank you so much. I mean, this is like, this is, yeah, it's therapy related, but this is also just human dysregulation related. And the great thing about this is you can teach this to your families too, right? You don't have to be a therapist to be able to talk about this stuff, to know about this stuff. And then last but not least is your mind, right? So part of this, and as you'll see as we go through this actually incorporates also your body and also your breathing, but pausing and stopping. And that STOP is an acronym. There's so many acronyms for all sorts of fun things in mindfulness. If you start Googling, you can find all sorts of fun little things. I like this one. I feel like it really is applicable for us in the work that we do. So the first one is slow, right? If you notice that you're in that stress response, just slow down what you're doing, right? If you're moving a lot, stop your movement, slow down your movement. If your mind is going, racing, right? Just take awareness. Wow, my mind's going a million miles a minute. Let me just try to slow down my mind, right? And that could be like, let me just look around the room and what I see to ground myself. There's a phone, there's a plant, there's a lamp. Slowing down your mind, right? Then the T for taking a breath that we just talked about, right? When you're in that stress response, before you do any action, take a breath, take 3 breaths. Calm the nervous system down through your breathing, right? Then observe, right? This is really that mindfulness piece. This is your experience in the moment. What do I notice? What emotions am I feeling? Okay, I'm feeling like really anxious, and I'm feeling like a little bit fearful and actually a little bit angry right now. And what are my thoughts saying? My thoughts are telling me I should just go home right now. My thoughts are telling me that, maybe I should work at Costco, right? What are my thoughts telling me right now? And my physical sensations. Okay, what's my body telling me? My body's very tense right now. Let me try to relax that, right? And then once we've done that check-in, that's putting that space in between stress and reaction. where once we're ready, we can proceed and respond from a place of regulation. Okay. So again, if I had 2 hours, we would go into so many different details. This is a really good start for you all to just introducing this mindful awareness for self-regulation into your practice, into your day-to-day. And it's the key to co-regulation, bringing this back to families, bringing this back to home visits, bringing this back to children, right? And again, back to that little, like, babies, caregivers, us, supervisors, right? We, in order to keep showing up for people, and the reason, the why behind what we do, we need to be able to regulate ourselves before we can regulate anybody else. And I love this little picture. When their storm meets our calm, co-regulation occurs, okay? It starts with you, right? And this is why self-care is so important. This is why understanding what's happening in your hearts, in your minds, in your bodies is so important. I'm going to do my shameless plug for therapy because I feel like everyone should be in therapy. This is why doing therapy in the work that we're doing is so important, because our emotions are so consistently activated, right? You can either co-regulate or co-dysregulate. Like I said before, they're both contagious, right? So you have the ability, it's like some Spider-Man stuff here, right? Great power, great responsibility. Self-care and co-regulation, like I said, go hand in hand. If you're not taking care of yourself, it's going to be really hard to take care of anybody else. It's like that whole airplane, put your own mask on first, right? You have to be able to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. And if you're not genuinely taking care of yourself, you can't genuinely show up and take care of someone else, right? You are the model. You're modeling this for the caregivers who are then modeling it for their kids, right? You're like this anchor. You regulate yourself first and you move from there. It will follow, I promise you, as long as you continue to take care of yourselves. This work, like I said, it's personal, it's vulnerable, but it is transformative. You are changing lives one person at a time, and continue to honor yourself through the process. That is what I have for you before we get to questions. And I just really, again, I want to thank you all for the work that you're doing. It is so incredibly important. Whew. All right. Hey, we made it through. That was about an hour, right? And I think that you all were maybe going to have if there was questions that came up, if I think we have a couple of minutes. Yeah.
I think we do have a couple questions, and I just wanted to thank you so profoundly. I think this resonated pretty deeply with everybody. I know it did with me, and I know our parents appreciate all the support we bring them and all the gifts and the lactation support and their referrals. But I can't think of something more profound for us to bring the families we serve than learning how to take care of ourselves and how to co-regulate. Because I know as a mom, that is the thing. It's so hard. And that is how you give resilience in the midst of trauma and struggle. And yeah, this is just profoundly helpful. So thank you so much. And I do think we have a couple questions. And also, if anyone is thinking of questions, please pop those in the Q&A box. And then Patrick and Terry, did you want to read the question that was in there? I think there's one now.
Sure. Thank you, Kathryn, and thank you, Jess, for your awesome presentation, as always. So one question we do have is, what would be the best strategy to ensure we don't distress our clients in a situation when we are triggered?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think, that it's really that what I was just talking about, the end of putting your oxygen mask on first, right? Is doing your best to regulate yourself first. So sometimes when we're stressed out, we can see the client or the family stressed out, we want to go right into helping them problem solve and helping them be okay, but that's reacting, right? That's coming from a place of our own dysregulation. So if we can do that pause and get ourselves to a place of regulation first. That's going to be the best way to help them also regulate along with us, and to also help them not pick up on our own dysregulation. And like I said, this is a journey. This isn't something you're going to do overnight. It takes practice. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Jess. And if you have any other questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A. Do any of our panelists have questions as well? I think we're just so amazed with your presentation. Jess, we're all really regulated.
It was kind of a lot. It was a lot of, in fact, a lot of information into like a very short amount of time. So if you have questions like later today, you can find a way to get them to me, and I would be more than happy to answer them for you.
Thank you so much. And I will turn it over to Charlene.
Thank you so much, Jess. Thank you, Terry. We're actually going to take one more minute here before we pass it on. I've got a Mentimeter I'm going to share in just a second, just to get a little bit more of a sense of what resonated with you all. So if you give me one moment here, I am going to drop that link into the chat box for everyone, and I'm going to screen share as well. And the question is, what resonated with you from our keynote presentation? What are some things that really stuck out? What are you walking away with? What is something you'll do different tomorrow? Anything you're willing to share? We've got answers already coming in. Help starts at home with us. Responsibility, empathy. Jess, we got your name just that's who resonated. Your own oxygen mask first, remembering to breathe, co-regulation, lots of self-care, remembering to self-regulate. Co-regulation is contagious. I love that one. Ways to be more responsive than reactive. Focus on breathing. Concrete ways to regulate myself. If we're good, we can take care of others. Absolutely. Breathe and scan my body. And I apologize, I'm not able to read all of this. I'm trying to be mindful of time as well, but I'm trying to get most of the trends happening here. Mindfulness. I'm learning not to rush to fix the problem. That's great. Yeah. Again, responsibility, pause and stop. Listening to myself matters. How important it is for us to be well, to be able to present for our client. Absolutely. Being the family's anchor. Actually, just reading a comment here. Actually, honestly, it felt like someone actually understands what we go through, and that alone is amazing. Also to keep calm for you and your family. Thank you for sharing that. Practical self-care, awareness, lots of responses coming in. Yeah, well, Jess, I think this was just a testament of how folks are feeling with your presentation. Thank you for taking a minute here to share what everyone is feeling at this moment. And thank you again, Jess, for your wonderful presentation.